Now we need to note that there is a difference between auditing objectives and quality assurance objectives. With quality assurance, you're trying to make sure that the system is bug-free, functional according to the specifications of what it's supposed to do, how it's supposed to perform. You can think of quality assurance as ensuring that the product is not defective as it's being produced. When you look at the auditing process, then it's ensuring that the system is working and complies with the different security policies, business policies, regulations, and the laws set up. Of course, sometimes you have your performance monitoring, and with that you're trying to observe at various operational times. With the audit process flow, then the system, you're going to look at it throughout the system development life cycle. With the auditing process itself, you're going to understand what the objectives are. You're going to go through and review and verify and validate the system as you go. So you're going to look at during the development time, during the end product, and during revisions to make sure everything lines up in your monitoring. And of course you're going to document your results. So when we're looking at developing our objectives, part of that process is going to be selecting out the entity that's going to be audited. In order to do the selection, you're going to look at reasons such as compliance, maybe informing what activities are actually going on. It could be for planning, looking at peak times, that sort of thing, for performance and execution. So there'll be a variety of reasons. For example, you might look at statement auditing, where it's going to audit SQL statements by type and not the specific schema objects to which they operate. You could be looking at privilege auditing. In that case, you're looking at the system privileges corresponding to certain actions. With privilege auditing, it's more focused on statement auditing because the audits only use the use of the target privilege. And then you could have schema object auditing, in which case it's looking at statements on a particular schema object, and with that it's very focused on auditing only a selected statement on the specific schema object. So looking at your objectives, you could have one on data integrity, in which case you're looking at the application users and the roles to make sure how things are changed within there and that there's no issues as far as making sure that the data is accurate. Confidentiality, once again, you might be looking at access control, who can get to it, making sure no unauthorized accounts can get to it. The data changes is important as far as looking at your auditing. It could be one of your objectives. You could have structure changes like creation of tables and such and updates. You could look at availability of the database or the application, peak times, that sort of thing. Once again, the change control, physical access, and then of course you have your auditing reports that would tie into showing compliance and meeting regulations and laws. Some of the key things about auditing as far as the benefits is it's going to make sure that the company policies and government regulations and laws are being met. It's also going to lower the incidence for the security violation. It's going to go through and it's going to show you where there's security gaps and vulnerabilities that you need to fix. Likewise, you have your audit trail of your activities, so you can see what's happening, what order, how it's happening, that sort of thing. It's going to provide you a means to observe and evaluate the operations of whatever is being audited, whatever object. And this allows the organization to be more accountable for what's happening within the database and how it's happening. And then it gives a chance to develop the controls that can be used for
purposes other than just auditing. So you can make sure that the correct privileges are set on accounts, that the correct setup is done on different objects. Now, I mentioned before some places have weak audits or audit trails and such, and one of the reasons this can happen is because audits will have a impact on the performance. Anytime you do anything, you're going to be using resources. Likewise, you could end up with too many reports and documents, and therefore it makes it extremely hard to dig through and actually see what's going on. So you want to make sure that you're selecting the correct things to be auditing, the correct actions, procedures, the different objects. And of course, it can give a disruption to the operations of whatever entity or object is being audited. And then I mentioned performance relates to consumption of resources, and with that then you also have to think about costs from the downtime. Now, there's a variety of different auditing models that you can use. So your simple auditing model one would be registering the audited entities in the audit model repository. You would look at it chronologically, tracking the activities performed. You could be looking at the user, the table, or the column. With that, then the DML transaction or log on and log off times would be recorded. You'd have controlling columns as a placeholder for the data inserted automatically when a record is created, or updated, like the date and time when it's created and updated. With that, then the CTL, the control prefix, can be used to indicate it or to note it. Now, if you look at the simple audit method model 2, then you're doing your auditing where you're storing only the column value changes, and with that you have a mechanism that's purging and archiving. That's going to reduce the amount of data that's being stored, so ease back on the resources being consumed by the audit. It's not going to register an action that was performed on the data. It's ideal for just auditing a column or two of a table, so different function, different use. You can have your advanced model with the repository being more complex. With that, then you would register all the entities using the fine-grained auditing level, and you could handle different users, actions, tables, and columns. And as you would think, it's going to use more resources to use this approach on your model for your auditing. So just wanted to look at some different terms that are used, because sometimes it gets a little confused and people swap different terms. But when you talk about auditing, in the audit you're looking at examining and validating different documents for the business, the data and the procedures, different processes in the system. The log then is going to document, it's going to be the document that's going to contain the activities that are being audited, ordered in a chronological manner. So you can look at step 1, this happened, next this happened, next this happened. The objectives then are going to be your set of business rules, system controls, security policies, and such that you are trying to accomplish looking at through your audit. And once you figure out what your objectives are, you can set up your procedures, and that'll be the instructions for the auditing process itself. The trail then would be the actual record of documentation of the changes that occurred, the data changes, system activities, operational events. So it's actually going to be your records that you will pull from for your reports. So we've briefly gone through an overview of the auditing fundamentals. With the audit, you're going to examine, verify, and validate different documents, procedure, and processes. Make sure that your company policies and business rules are lined up. The environment consists of having your objectives formed, so you know what you're trying to accomplish, the procedures to do it, the people involved in it, and then what exactly you're auditing, the entities, what you're looking at.
it's going to make the audit's going to make sure that the system is working and complies with the policies and standards, the different regulations and laws. The auditing objectives are established during the developmental phase, so that's the first thing you're going to do. And then the objectives are going to tie back with the compliance, informing, planning, and executing, so that you can do the comparison and be able to monitor what's happening.